Hello and welcome to another episode of the Talking of Minds podcast. So, in this episode, we'll be speaking about the psychology or the psychological factors that influence mob violence and mob lynchings. We often see news reports of mob violence, and we sometimes wonder why people, resort to these kind of violence. Sometimes violence that takes the lives of people or brings a lot of damage to property and lives. The definition of mob violence is, an act of violence committed by a group of individuals, and these individuals may not even know each other. It can happen that even perfect strangers become part of such a violent mob, and they are often fueled by a shared mentality and some kind of a loss of inhibitions that would prevent them from doing such things. So this is what a mob violence is. And if we look at who are the people who are part of such violent mobs, we may try to think that these are people who have some kind of a mental, abnormality, or people who are particularly violent. But contrary to such, a common perception, people who are involved in mobs need not be necessarily violent or abnormal individuals. They can be ordinary individuals just like you and me. But there are certain factors that increase the risk of a person being part of such violent mobs. That include a low self-esteem or a history of violence in their upbringing, or having a dysfunctional family during the childhood, and people who have high levels of hostility or hostile feelings towards other people whom they think of as belonging to other groups, may also be more susceptible to become part of mob violence. But the thing to remember is that almost everyone can become a part of a violent mob given the right conditions and the right motivation. And there is also online forms of mob violence where even more seemingly normal people can become part of a violent group of people who unleash some kind of violence online. And it can happen in many ways, such as cyberbullying, which has kind of become a political weapon also in places like India, and actions like doxing. Doxing is the malicious posting of private information of someone without their consent on the internet in order to bring some kind of a difficulty to them. And online mob violence can also have severe consequences. They can cause psychological trauma, they can cause damage to reputation, they can even lead the victims of such violence to even to physical harm or even suicide. So online mob violence is also something that has to be treated very seriously. Now, coming to the theories or the psychological factors that are related to such violence, there is a theory called the emergent norm theory, which is proposed by Ralph Turner and Louis Killian. And the emergent norm theory explains how norms on what is an acceptable behavior or what is not acceptable emerge in groups. So if even every individuals, even you and me, have individually decided norms on what is acceptable behavior and what is not acceptable behavior. But when individuals become part of a violent mob, such kind of a group, through the interactions within the group, a shared understanding of appropriate behavior emerges, which can be very different from what is our personal norms. So the group's norms on what is normal and what is acceptable can override the individual inhibitions, and it can contribute to group violence. So such norms can make every individual more violent than they usually are in their normal life. And then there is the anonymity, which is which one gets when one is part of a group. So when you become a part of the group, you lose a part of your individual identity and your responsibility. And this is particularly true when you are part of an online mob. Even for physical violent mobs, there is this anonymity and the group mentality that helps us shed our inhibitions and act do things that are normally, we don't do. So it is the same mentality that makes us dance in a group when we have, or when, makes us dance in a dance floor where, the light is very low. There is not much of, identification of yourself as an individual. The kind of things that we do when we are in a concert, singing along with a singer, which we may not do when we are alone in another place, or in the, when others are looking at you. So this is the same kind of group mentality and anonymity that makes us do such things. It can also lead to us doing violent things. So what happens here is a process called de-individuation. So, it's a loss of self-awareness and personal identity. So you are no longer the individual that you are, but you are a small part of a mob or a group which has common goals and a common motivation. And there is not much of a responsibility of yours or your own when you do things, which is called the diffusion of responsibility. So when you are in a group and you do something, you feel that the responsibility is shared with everyone. Even if you are the one doing something, you have this sense of the responsibility of whatever things you are doing is shared by everyone. So that is what we call as, the diffusion of responsibility. So there is a diminished sense of personal accountability. You are not much accountable to whatever you do. You are doing this because you are a part of this group. So that's called the diffusion of responsibility. These are all factors that contribute to people becoming violent or being part of group violence. There is also a desire to conform. We all want to be accepted by others. And when you identify with some kind of a group and you want to be accepted in the group so much, and then the group decides to be violent online or offline to someone or to some group of people, you fear being left out in the group if you are not part of whatever the group is doing. So you have this desire of acceptance, and that desire to be accepted by the group can also contribute to this diminished responsibility and going into violence. And what groups do are a couple of things. There is something called dehumanization of the victim. So whatever, whether the victim is a person or a group of persons, we dehumanize the victims. So this dehumanization involves, perceiving the victim as, less human than you are, and thereby justifying your violence. So we can see that all around the world, when there is group violence on marginalized communities, there is the trend of using non-human words to describe the group of people, such as them being locusts or termites or those kind of things. So termites are things that have to be get rid of. So you don't feel much shame or much of a prick of conscience when you justify the violence against them, or when you even take part in violence against them. And dehumanization is part of something called moral disengagement. Now, moral disengagement is something that Albert Bandura had written a lot about, and it's in fact it is a topic for another discussion altogether. But dehumanization is a very important part of what we call as moral disengagement. How we disengage from our own actions, morally, when we do things that are not moral or right according to our personal, standards. And then there is prejudices against the vulnerable groups that exist in a society, which will lead to the chances of people being violent against them. So there have been studies done in India and Pakistan which find that lynching is a part of a process of marginalization in both these countries. So there is widespread prejudices against certain sections of people, so that violence against individuals or groups of these people are largely they are normalized within ourselves. We even normalize when we see news of violence against people, because we have some kind of a prejudice against them. Then there is a apathy of the state The state machinery is not very swift in controlling such incidents. That is something that can embolden the people who do violence. So there is a sense of impunity that fuels, so that encourages this kind of violence. And there have been some strategies, that can help address such violence. But we have to remember that mob violence and mob lynchings are social issues or political issues, where individual remedies may not work, but there are things that we can try to do, such as promoting critical and analytic thinking again, among people, especially against, among the young and the students. So if we have this culture of more critical thinking and analytical thinking against people, among people, it is likely that they will have better immunity against the kind of things that we talked about, the diffusion of responsibility, or the individuation. People can think out of such trends. They can be less prejudiced against people, and there is the need to hold the perpetrators accountable. The state to be very vigilant against any kind of such incidents, so that these tendencies do not grow in groups. There is also, it is very important to promote inclusion, against people. Let people know each other. Let people not, conform to their own groups and be confined to their own opinions, and break the bubbles that happen, especially within the social media and all. Break the bubbles and let people mingle, and let ideas, be spread, within each other. And there is, at the individual level, we can use counseling and psychotherapy when people who are more susceptible to be violent and all. Then if they need some kind of a mental health support, we can give that. There is also kind of trainings that we can give to people, such as conflict resolution trainings and perspective taking exercises, which can help people think from outside of their own perspective, to understand other people, to understand differences, and be more harmonious with each other. So those kind of trainings can be given. Then there are also, some suggestions by Arvind Verma, who is with the Department of Criminal Justice at Indiana University. He has, published a paper where he has given a lot of, practical tips that can be done by the state specifically, such as, reminding people of rules and, the repercussions of violent acts, target hardening, which is, limiting the access to potential victims and survivors, and reminding people of their individual identity, rather than being part of the group. Even when reminding that even if you are part of a group, you are an individual and you have individual responsibilities and norms. Reminding people of their individuality can also help take them away from group mentalities. And there can be community mobilization and awareness programs, that can help people think outside of their narrow-minded prejudices and misconceptions. So these are the things, the psychological factors that have been proposed, which are related to incidences of, mob violence and mob lynchings. Hope you had something to learn from this episode, and thanks for the listening.